So the worthless Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden task forces that were created to, trick some Bernie Sanders supporters into believing that Joe Biden is going to do some of the policies that they care about. Well, the task forces came back with their recommendations to the Joe Biden campaign. As expected, the left got rolled, got absolutely nothing, none of our top priorities. No Medicare for all, no Green New Deal, no UBI, no free college. Joe Biden won't even legalize marijuana. So, got absolutely nothing out of this. As you'd expect, a lot of people on the left, a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters, rightfully pissed off. And to add fuel to the fire, Bernie comes out and tries to gaslight the left and tries to make Bernie seem like Joe Biden will be the most progressive president ever of our lifetime. And this added another layer of scathing criticism that Bernie Sanders was getting from his former supporters on the left. And this has triggered some of the people in the Bernie Sanders Defense League. Then now David Dole, the host of the Rational National, decides to come out and do an entire video basically attacking anybody on the left who's criticizing Bernie Sanders for promoting these useless, shitty task forces and lying, pretending like Joe Biden is the most progressive thing since sliced bread. So there's a lot in this video that annoyed the shit out of me. So I want to get to it. The first clip I'm going to show you is a couple seconds, about 30 seconds, then we'll come back and break it down.
People appear to be freaking out. At least some people are, and it's pretty hilarious. Both freaking out at what Bernie said in the clip, which I will get to later. I have some things to get to first. And also freaking out at the outcome of these joint policy task forces, even though we've known the whole time, including people that are feigning outrage, that, of course, these task forces were not going to support Medicare for all or Green New Deal or any of Bernie's big policy proposals. We knew that back then, and that's what happened.
All right, so the part about that clip that really just got under my skin was when he accuses people on the left of feigning outrage. We're pretending. This is all pretend. This is all a show. For what reason, I don't know. People on the left are pretending to be outraged that Joe Biden, while we are in the height of pandemic, being wrecked worse than any country in the world, is continuing to be against Medicare for all solely for the profits of his donors in the private health insurance industry. David Dole says people are feigning outrage about that. People are feigning outrage that at this late date, 2020, Joe Biden, the drug warrior, tough on crime Joe Biden, still won't legalize marijuana, knowing damn well that it's the source of this new Jim Crow, this mass incarceration crisis that we have in this country, that was caused by Joe Biden himself. He won't even ameliorate the problems that he created. David says people are feigning outrage, that there's nothing about it, that there's no Green New Deal in it. As if we're not in the middle of a cataclysmic climate apocalypse. He says people are feigning outrage. He says all of us are feigning outrage because we already knew Joe Biden was a shitty politician. We already knew Joe Biden was corrupt as fuck. We already knew Joe Biden was going to propose the most right-wing corporatist policies imaginable. So why are you upset about it? That's literally his argument. You already knew that he was going to do it, so why are you mad? Counterpoint, people aren't feigning outrage. People are righteously upset. There's righteous indignation because it's their lives that we're talking about. People's actual lives we're talking about. There are people whose lives depend on these policies. If we don't get Medicare for all, before this pandemic, 40,000 people were dying every single year because they couldn't afford basic health care. So whether or not we get that policy is life or death for tens of thousands and ultimately hundreds of thousands and millions of people in this country. People aren't feigning outrage because the leader of the so-called left-wing party in this country is against that policy. People are literally outraged about it because it's an outrageous position to take. And just because you know Joe Biden's corrupt, you know his history, doesn't make it less outrageous. That just means you know what you're going to get ahead of time. Like, he's literally telling all the people who ration their insulin, all the people who can't afford $700, $800 a month for insulin payments to survive. He's telling all these people, oh, come on, stop it with the crocodile tears. You already knew Joe Biden was going to fuck you. You already knew Joe Biden was going to let you die from rationing insulin. So why are you pretending to be outraged? That's literally what he's saying. Now, this video gets progressively worse. I have another clip to show you.
You can absolutely criticize Bernie's strategy. His strategy in terms of making Joe Biden sound better than he actually is. You can criticize that strategy, but understand his job here is not to be a political commentator. His job is not to just, go on Chris Hayes and then yell and scream about how the Joint Task Force didn't come up with Medicare for all and a Green New Deal and screw Joe Biden. Like, I'm not sure how that's going to lead to any positive result.
Boy, did you see that bait and switch there? So he starts off by pretending to be reasonable. He's making a reasonable assessment there. Hey, yeah, you could criticize Bernie for being disingenuous and saying Joe Biden's going to be so progressive and all that, but his job is not to be a political commentator. Okay, I'm here with you. You got me there, still with you. And here's the bait and switch. His job is not to go out there and rant and rave and call out Joe Biden and say Joe Biden is so corrupt and all that stuff. But wait, David, actually that is his job. He was the one who said he was leading a political revolution to overthrow the corrupt political establishment. So that means you're going to call out the corrupt political establishment wherever it is, whoever it is, regardless if it's your friend or if it's a Democratic nominee, if it's in your party or if it's in the Republican Party. The systemic problem here is the corruption, it's the money in politics, it's the subservience to political donors. And Joe Biden encapsulates all those things. And as we see through those task forces, he's not going to be moved an inch. There is no amount of talking to Joe Biden and trying to reason with Joe Biden that's going to move him an inch. So, like I said, if Bernie wants to claim the mantle, he did claim the mantle of being this big old revolutionary coming and overthrow the establishment. Well, then it is actually kind of your job to call out the establishment and say they're corrupt and rant and rave on TV and to draw attention to the outrageous, indefensible policies of the Democratic Party. That is part of your job description. And then David says, I don't know what kind of positive outcome could come from that. There's a lot of positive things that could come from that. You get attention because nobody in this country is actually telling the truth about the Democratic Party. So if Bernie Sanders were to actually come out and say, wow, Joe Biden's insanely corrupt and he's willing to let tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people die for the profits of the health insurance companies, that is immoral and I can't get behind it. If Bernie Sanders were to say that, that would force a real discussion. Forget about organizing, forget about pressure campaigns or anything like that. Just Bernie telling the truth would radically change discourse in this country. And the question would be asked, is Bernie actually right here? Is Joe Biden insanely corrupt and willing to let people die for the profits of the health insurance company? And that changes discourse, and that changes, that moves the needle closer to us getting Medicare for all. So yes, it would have a positive outcome.
Understand the role that Bernie has, and his thinking here, his strategy, is to try and appeal to Joe Biden personally. Politicians have egos. If Bernie acts this way in public, again, we're talking about before an election. Once he's in power, the game changes. But before the election, if he can treat Joe Biden with kid gloves the way he is doing, then the thinking here is that Bernie will be able to continue being a voice in Biden's ear, as opposed to him just going on TV and talking crap and getting shut out of the conversation.
Boy, would you look at the unrelenting mental gymnastics and apologetics for Bernie Sanders and his weakness and his spinelessness. He's basically saying Bernie's job is not to tell the truth. And like I explained a couple minutes earlier, that is actually Bernie's job. That is what he came out here on the scene telling people he was going to do. So that's his words, not mine. But David says that's not his job. His job is to make Joe Biden feel good and to talk up Joe Biden and say he's great and make. And then, what's the end result of this patty cakes and cozy, warm relationship with Joe Biden? What's the end result of this? Are we going to get some policy? Oh, no. Bernie's doing this. This is his job. So that after the election, oh boy, things going to change. Things going to change around here. It's going to be a real shakeup. And he's going to be more adversarial, and he's going to have Joe Biden's ear. He's going to have Joe Biden's ear so he could talk to Joe Biden more, and then he could probably convince him to do Medicare for all when Joe Biden's president. Duh! So of course Bernie has to come out and lie to us. Of course he has to come out and suck off Joe Biden and lie for Joe Biden. Of course he has to do all those things so that he can talk to Joe Biden when he's president. Wow, the bar is really fucking low now, isn't it? The bar is really low. I'm genuinely amazed by this. And this is how clueless and incoherent all the people who are still trying to defend Bernie Sanders and his so-called strategy sound at this point. Because just at the beginning of this video, wasn't David Dole talking about, oh, why you guys feigning outrage? We knew Joe Biden was going to be corrupt. We knew he was going to change his policies. We knew he was going to serve his donors. So why are you mad about it? That was David's position before, earlier in the video. Now he's saying, of course, we have to lay down and get rolled and do anything Joe Biden says so that after he's elected, we can talk to him some more and then maybe he'll change his mind. But didn't you just tell us, of course he wasn't going to change his mind when that task force was talking to him, no matter what AOC and Pramila Jayapal and Stephanie Kelton and whoever the fuck else was on the task force said, Joe Biden was going to change his mind, he was going to move an inch. So why do you think that's going to be any different when he's president of the United States, when he has more power than anyone else in the world? Why do you think that dynamic is going to change? It's not. And I don't know if you think it is, but he's just doing a bunch of rationalizations and mental gymnastics to excuse Bernie Sanders bending the knee and getting fucking rolled by Joe Biden. And then another point, he's delusional. If he thinks that as soon as Joe Biden gets elected, there's going to be a switch that flips in Bernie's head, and now he's going to be a adversarial attack dog, and he's coming at Joe Biden with everything he's got. That's not going to happen. We're going to get the same shit that Bernie Sanders is doing right now when Joe Biden's president. He's not standing up to Democratic leadership. He's not standing up to Nancy Pelosi. He's going along with every and anything they put in front of him. Corporate bailouts, the worst and the biggest corporate bailouts in history, $5 trillion to corporations and the richest people in this country who did not need it, while giving everybody else in the country, in the middle of an economic crisis, breadcrumbs. That's what the Democratic leadership put in front of Bernie Sanders, and he didn't put up any opposition, and he didn't put up a fight, and he voted for it, and he went along with it, and he justified it, and he told everybody how great all the stuff that they got in the bill was. That's the type of resistance that Bernie puts up to the Democratic leadership, which is none at all, and it won't be any different if Joe Biden's president. And you're delusional if you think that if you believe that. All right, so I have another clip to show you guys, and then I'll come back and talk about it.
So people were bothered by the fact that Bernie said Joe Biden's campaign is going to be the most progressive since FDR. I don't think that's wrong. Technically, that's not wrong. I think it's you can say it's misleading, but it's not wrong just based on the way that discussions and policy have progressed over 50, 60 years. I mean, yeah, it's not wrong. Bernie's job here is to try and appeal to Joe Biden personally. Try and continue to stay within his circle, to be a voice. Again, you can criticize that strategy. You can say it's not going to work. But doing the opposite also is not going to work. So you could say maybe Bernie should just stay home and not do anything. Okay, I guess. But if he's going to be on television talking, he's got two options. He's either going to defend Joe Biden and talk about how dangerous Trump is and we should get out Trump, or he's going to talk about how horrible Joe Biden is and like what? What's the result of that? I really don't understand. Like it gets back to, you have to understand the roles that different people play based on their positions in society, based on their access to certain people. So Bernie, who has access to Biden, is going to act a little differently than me, who has no access to Biden. We have different roles here. So nothing here that Bernie said is is incorrect. But yes, you can, I guess, criticize the strategy, but I'm not sure what else he can do at this point. Biden has the nomination. What else is going to happen?
I mean, and then that's just that. That was the end of the video. And I don't know why David and so many other people are so convinced that Bernie and all these elected progressives like AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, I don't know why they're so convinced that telling the truth about how corrupt the Democratic Party is and how bad they're trying to fuck the voters, I don't know why everybody's so convinced that that strategy just won't work. And he even tries to equate that to the strategy that Bernie's been using that definitely hasn't worked. And I don't understand how you have the same level of certainty, because nobody has tried the strategy of just telling the truth and being completely honest about how corrupt the Democratic Party is. Nobody has tried that yet. Definitely not Bernie Sanders. He always tiptoes and hedges and throws softballs when it comes to the Democratic Party, but because he does not actually speak the truth about them. So I don't understand why you're so convinced that that's not going to work. You're as convinced it's not going to work as this sweet talking and backslapping and congratulating and sucking Joe Biden off. We know that strategy doesn't work. We've seen that. We're watching right now how that strategy doesn't work because Joe Biden is moving to the right. Joe Biden is proposing right-wing policies when the moment demands otherwise. So the sweet talking doesn't work. That's a fact. It's not a fact that telling the truth and being honest and going scorched earth doesn't work. That's not a fact. That hasn't been proven yet. So I'm gonna need everybody to stop pretending like, oh, it's just those are just two equally bad and ineffective strategies. No, actually they're not. And I think one of them will be incredibly effective. And I just wish somebody would actually do it. So this is pathetic. And like I said, it's new media. It's supposed to be holding politicians accountable. But when it comes to Bernie Sanders and the elected progressives, they've turned their minds off. It's very cultish, and I think part of it is access to politicians and the people who are in their circles, so they don't want to offend any of their new friends who might have worked on Bernie's campaign or anything like that. I think part of it is the sunk cost fallacy. They've put in so much effort building up and propping up these elected progressives. Now that they're so committed to it that they don't want to actually tell the truth and be like, oh shit, it looks like we were all had and these guys aren't going to get shit done. They don't want to turn back now because they put in so much energy. I also think part of it is they're just pandering to the audience. They don't want to have a bunch of Bernie supporters and sycophants leave their audience because they're telling the truth about how he's a sellout and how he's a fraud and how he's working on behalf of the establishment to screw everybody over. They don't want to hear it. So a lot of these people in new media, they don't want to say it. Well, I don't give a fuck about any of that. I'm going to speak the truth. And I'm glad that I don't have personal relationships with the people in Bernie Sanders' campaign or in the orbit of these elected progressives, because if that means I'd be doing gross apologetics like that and mental gymnastics trying to excuse and justify Bernie gaslighting his supporters on behalf of Joe Biden, who calling him the most progressive president of our lifetime, as he's promising to veto Medicare for all in a pandemic, if that's what that would do to me, I want no part of it. So I'm fine being on the outside and criticizing everybody, because the way that new media is operating now, everybody's too intertwined and intermingled and interconnected that nobody ever wants to tell the truth about how shitty not only the elected progressives are, but they don't want to tell the truth about how their friends in new media, like David Dole, like David Pacman, like Tim Black. Tim Black's been on this Bernie Defense League too. All these people, Cenk Uygur, Emma Vigeland, all the people at the Young Turks, nobody wants to speak the truth about how they're gaslighting their audience and how they're misleading their audience because everybody's buddy and they're all close friends. I don't want any part of that if that's going to make me do that nonsense. I want nothing to do with that. So the task forces, as we suspected, didn't produce a goddamn thing. Joe Biden still as right-wing and corporatist as expected. And like I said, when Bernie first dropped out the race and then he endorsed Joe Biden, I said, it's going to be hard to find nice things to say about Bernie Sanders. It really is going to be hard to find nice things to say about him because at every turn, he's going to be working. He's made it his goal now to get Joe Biden elected. That's it. that's the beginning and end of all conversations. We need to get Joe Biden elected, and that's fundamentally against everything that he was, the movement that he was building, and fundamentally against everything that the left stand for. So it's going to be hard to find nice things to say about Bernie Sanders because he's acting as a tool of the establishment now, and it's just crystal clear. And all the people in new media on the left who are still defending this, it's a sad fucking sight, and you look pathetic.